Howdy folks. So this is a quick video to help you get ready for the third problem this week. And I also wanted to show you a couple of resources. So one is this website called replit.com. It's just Replit, just like it sounds. You can see, they call their things REPLs. But if you make an account here, it actually is a way to run C++ code, and actually a lot of programming languages on a website. So if you open this up, you can scroll down and you can pick a C++. And you can give it a title. I'm going to leave it as Zesty Beige Marketing because, well, I like silly names. And when it boots up, then you have, what kind of looks pretty familiar. It has a little place to do files. It has the main sort of editor area, and then it has a little console to run. So if I just clicked run, which on this one's Control Enter, which I actually think is kind of nice, you hit Control Enter, and it prints out a hello world there on the screen. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, so hopefully you can see this a little better. Oops, that's probably too much zoom. It's like there's like a right amount of zoom. That's the right amount of zoom. Okay, so you'll notice here, see how it says std steam std cout. That's because they don't have using namespace as in there. And now that that's in there, you can get rid of it. You can also see that there's a little \n like this right here. That is a shortcut to do end line. So if you have a string, you can always add a \n to the end of it to do an end line instead of doing the traditional endl like that. So either way is the fine to do that. So I'm going to do our demo in this. It'll work the same. This is a great way for you to work on stuff at home. We're actually sort of working on a way that we might be able to do the graphic stuff in this. Right now we can't do the graphic stuff in this. So we'll be able to use this up until spring break if it's something you want to do things at home. The other important sort of little technical thing about this is if you click on these little three dots, you'll get an option to download, and then you can download the .cpp file for turning it in and things like that. Or you could always do some copy and pasting, but if you make an account and stuff, it'll save it here so you can get at it later. Okay, so for our little demo here, I want to do a demo on getting ourselves set up with keeping track of stuff in arrays, not just pushing things into them, but using them to sort of tally things. And so to do that, I'm going to set up a couple of things. So I'm going to do a little copying and pasting, so save myself some typing. And I'm going to add these includes. I'm going to include IOStream, I'm going to include random, I'm going to include time, and I'm going to include vector. And then I have my using namespace, std. Once I have that, you can imagine that I'm doing random. I'm going to set up my random number generator. So I'm going to set up my MT1933 generator. And I'm going to use time null as the seed. Okay, so I got that all set up there. And then, as you might expect, I'm going to do my uniform int distribution, and I'm going to give it an int. Int. And I'm going to call it int dist, because that's kind of what I like to call it. And I'm just going to do a little six-sider, because what am I going to do with this program? I am going to roll the dice, and I'm going to keep track of how many of each dice roll show up. So, I want to know, I got 5 6s or something. So this is kind of I'm going to roll lots of them. And so kind of a traditional way, we could kind of do this maybe like you did the grading program where I have a variable for each one, but I can also I'm going to make something called a tally, my tally sheet, which is just a vector of integers. And I'm going to preset it up because when you make a vector and you make it right off the bat, you can actually tell it how big it is by putting stuff into it. So if I use these little pointy brackets, I am going to put 6 zeros in there, if you can see. And then I am going to have you can see here that you can kind of see its value. It has a bunch of zeros in it, and it'll have size 6, okay? And what is that going to let me do? Well, that's going to let me, instead of having this just be like the sequence of rolls, which kind of could, I'm going to have each one of these little spots represent a different number that I get. So the index 0 of my tally sheet is going to represent how many 1s I have. And then the last spot in the list is going to represent how many 6s I have. So I'm going to sort of do a little map here. Like if I think about the index of the tally sheet, like it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That's like the index list. And then my rolls could either be a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or 6, right? These are like possible rolls. So hopefully you can see that, like, look, the index and the rolls are pretty much the same, right? They're just shifted off by 1. So I'm going to use that fact that I know my rolls are integers so that I can directly go to the right spot in the list, and I'm going to save myself the trouble of writing a bunch of if statements. We kind of saw something like this in our Scrabble score, right? When we were being a little bit clever about, avoiding having to compare lots of letters and things. So what am I going to do? Well, you know what? I'm going to make a variable called numRolls. And this is just how many rolls I'm going to do. And to like start off, I'll just give it a value of 100 because I mean, eventually I might ask the user to type stuff in, but for the demo, we'll just do that. And then I'm going to go in and just set up a classic, for loop. I is less than numRolls and I plus plus. Cool. I'm going to come over here. And what am I going to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to make a little variable. I'm going to make int. I'm going to call it roll, which is my current roll. And it's going to be an int dist using the generator. Generator. Cool. And so I do int dist generator. Awesome. And then I'm just going to see out the rolls. And I'm going to put a little character there at the thing. And let's just see how that goes. Let's just make sure that we're generating random numbers and it feels pretty good. It's thinking for a minute and it's running. And if you do this on code blocks, which I imagine most of you will be doing if you're doing it at home, you'll probably notice that it's ran a lot faster on code blocks. So this is because it's on the web and stuff, it's, compiling on their server and then coming over here. So there's a little bit of a delay. Still pretty fast. Feels faster, to the JavaScript, but definitely not as fast as running code blocks on your thing. So you can see here, I got a sequence of numbers, and if I, run it again, right, hit Control Enter again, you can see now that, it actually runs really fast. See how it's running really fast? It's because it doesn't have to compile it anymore because it knows it hasn't changed. So it's actually being kind of smart and not recompiling it. But you can see I'm getting lots of different numbers. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to tally up. I want to know how many 4s, 5s, and 6s I got. So instead of writing an if statement for each one, well, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to say go into my tally sheet. And I am going to go to a specific index. I'm going to go to spot roll -1. Remember how we lined them up? And then I'm just going to add 1 to that spot. Okay. So whatever I rolled, then I'm going to go into the tally sheet and sort of tick up that little box. Cool. Well, to make sure that I know this works, I'm going to need another loop to print out the result. So I need to print the result. Okay. And so to do this, I'm going to do for. I'm going to do int. I could do I again, but I'll do j. J is less than, tally sheet dot size. Now, why am I doing it this way? I know it's 6. I have all sorts of things to do it. I just like to be in the habit of, if I'm making a for loop that's going to go through every piece of a list, I just kind of like to write down that I'm going to compare it against the size, so I don't ever make any like out of bounds mistakes. If I know if I go up to the size, I'm not likely to go out of bounds. And then, well, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to see out, and I'm going to just say, well, what am I going to print out? Well, I'm going to just print out j plus 1. And this isn't going to change j. It's just going to apply that value. And then I'm going to be like has and then I'm going to do tally sheet. And then I'm going to print out the thing at spot j. Cool. And then I'm going to end the line. So if I run this real quick, see now how it's doing the make and it's kind of slow again because it's recompiling it because we made changes. And, ooh, wait, better throw in an extra end line in here so we can see the difference of the thing, because see how these lines are up there? It's because I didn't throw in an extra end line. So now we compile it. We generated all of our numbers, and we could say like 1 has, there are 19 ones, there are 21 twos, there are 12 threes, 12 fours, 16 fives, and 26s. Hey, we got a little low on the 3s and 4s. Yeah, there's a little random chance. Let's run it again. Ooh, we got unlucky with 5s and 1s this time. Okay, cool. We should see some variance, but we should see over time that, roughly there's 6 things here. We generated 100 numbers. They should be in the, 20 plus or minus a little bit range. We feel pretty good that that's doing what it's doing. Cool. So that's kind of the setup there. Another thing that we can kind of do that might be a little bit useful is, sometimes we wanted to we could have like a visual representation of this, right? And so we might want to print out, I don't know, instead of printing out the numbers, we might want to print out a few stars or something like that to represent it, which is what you'll do for the other one of the other problems. And so basically the easy way to do that is, instead of me printing out all these things, I could print out I go into the spot and I get the size, and if I just wanted to print out 6 stars, well, what would I do? Well, right here I would print out star, and then I wouldn't put the end line right after it, because if I run it, I should probably get rid of the rolls. See how I printed 6 things because tally sheet.size is 6, and they're all right next to each other. And so then if I finished, then I could just do cout end line, and it'll print a little stars and then go to the next line. What I'd really encourage you for the histogram problem is to write a little function that you tell it a number of stars to print, and then it just goes through a little loop, and it prints out the right number of stars, and then it hits end line. And that'll be pretty useful for doing the histogram to kind of simplify your code, and then you won't have to worry about too much double looping stuff. So those are some hints and some advice for this. Hopefully this was all useful for you. See you in a little bit. Peace.